Hello, my name is Jocelyn and I am a victim of sexual abuse. I was in unplanned pregnancy born to teenage parents. My parents did marry, but after a period of time divorced. Through their separation, I was alienated from one parent and left to reside with the other in a single parent home. I recall the environment in that home. I felt very lonely, left alone, and unattended a lot. I didn't have a close paternal bond with my parent. And in that time, we had a lot of caregivers come in. This particular caregiver was known to me. He was a family member. I knew him to be quite volatile and quite violent, as I had seen him be quite explosive, both verbally and physically, with other family members. So I was a little bit apprehensive of him at first, but he quickly warmed me up to him. He was kind and playful and providing the affection and attention I was drastically lacking, and the void that I was missing in my parent being alienated from my life. In time, the grooming, it increased in severity. It was cuddling up in his lap, and then he began to teach me human names associated with body parts. Those names would later be used for him to dictate the sexual acts that he was wanting to do with me, to me to him. And also, the where the abuse occurred within our apartment was dictated upon the severity of what he was doing to me, and how much privacy he wanted with me, as he was also caring for another child at that time, whether it be on a couch or in a chair or under a blanket or behind a locked door. The abuse ended around the time that my parent had met another partner, and we moved and relocated with that other partner, and that was when the abuse ended. When the abuse was occurring, I'm not quite sure how old I was. This was the size of me and what I looked like at the time of the abuse. I was in early elementary years. He, I thought, was an adult because at the time he appeared like an adult to me. But I later come to learn when I was older that he was a teenager himself. When we moved and the abuse stopped, I didn't miss the abuse, but I missed the bond that we had created. I had associated the bond and my relationship with him as love, and I was really missing that. I was not missing the sexual abuse. It had made me feel gross and it had made me feel sick, but I was missing the comfort, the affection in the relationship. My association with what he did with me, with love, later in life became a very negative factor in my relationships and with myself, unfortunately. I didn't report my abuse. Why, I do not know. But where it became to come out in me in a negative way was near the end of middle school, prior to going into high school. It was around the time that sex ed was being taught in the schools, and I began to know that what had occurred was wrong, and what kind of needed to be done. I became very low. I was suicidal, very depressed, and I knew I had to tell my parent. I didn't know how to do that, so I had left a note on the door, exterior door of our home, for my parent to find. When they did, I was met with questions. I had explained what had happened to me. I knew that I had needed need to see a doctor and that it should be reported to the authorities. Systematically, the right thing seemed to be done. I was taken to a doctor to be examined. Because of that, CAS became involved, and through CAS, I was given funded counseling. It was group therapy counseling, which did not do me any justice. I actually found it took me to a worse place and didn't heal anything. I was in a circle of other survivors who were sharing their stories. It was further, I felt, abusing me, and also I was like minimizing what had happened to me because I had felt so bad hearing some of these stories. I had so much empathy for other people. There was so many sessions given, and then that was done, and I was left with a 1-800 number in case I needed to speak with anyone or I had an emergency. Time went on, and I was just going to a very low place. From the way it was explained to me, my parent had went to the abuser's parent. They had a discussion on how to handle it. As far as I know, it was not reported to the authorities, but it was dealt with within our family, within our two families. He was told that he was not to have any communication with me, not be around me, or attend any family functions that I was to go to, and that we would keep it private between our families, and it was put to rest. I began to go further downhill. I didn't really feel any resolve. Through the group counseling, I was left feeling worse, and I just went to a very dark and low place, feeling suicidal. I ended up calling the 1-800 number for help. And my parent got wind that I had called, and I was met with a reaction that I was not expecting. They were quite angry and upset with me, and it was just left with to drop it, that I needed to forgive and move on, to stop dwelling on it. The rationalization given to me was that they didn't want CAS coming in the home and put the other children at risk, and I just needed to forgive and forget and move on. Fast forward to my adult life. Through those years, my parent had kept a relationship with my abuser, which was very hard for me to understand. I had one child who was in toddler years, and I had given birth to my second child who was still in nursing years. I had gone through quite a bit. He actually was a twin, and we lost one of the twins. So I was going through grief from the loss, postpartum with having a new baby. I was nursing. We have to go to a wedding where my abuser is going to be present. I don't know why, but I couldn't get myself out of going to that wedding. I had to be there. At that time, I was quite a doormat still. I didn't have a voice to advocate for myself. I was feeling very uncomfortable. I didn't want to be in a dress around my abuser. I didn't want to be nursing my child. I didn't want my children around my abuser. There was just so many emotions going on, and I was already in a very fragile state, being a new mother again and all I had went through. I had decided to leave my nursing son at a nearby home of a family member and go back and forth and nurse, because I couldn't bring myself to nurse at the hall. There was one point when me and my child were sitting around our table with the family, and my parent ended up getting up. My family members went to the table where my abuser was sitting, and they proceeded to sit down and have a conversation with him, and they were laughing and going on, and I was just devastated in that moment. It hurt so very badly. I kept thinking like that I meant nothing, and did they not believe me? And I went to a very bad place. in that moment. Also, like navigating, watching my child so he doesn't go around the table. It was all just a lot for me. Sadly, in time, my husband and I did divorce, and through that, my abuser came forward through an email and confessed on what he had done to me and my parent. He was worried that in my divorce, I would out him in the abuse, thinking that what he had done to me was the cause of the divorce. In that time frame, I thought, okay, my parent is seeing this, he's confessing, like everything's gonna change now, like I'll be believed. And it went back to that whole mentality of forgive and forget and like put it under the table. And it was like it didn't matter and I didn't matter, and I just went to, again, a very low place. Like, was I not believed? What did I matter? And it wasn't a good chapter of my life. Through the years after that, I ended up becoming very ill with an autoimmune disease. And from what I have learned through my healing journey is what we don't deal with, we internalize. And the traumas and pains and stresses we internalize, they manifest through our body, and they can manifest through mental and physical health issues. And through my healing journey of healing my autoimmune disease, I also healed the trauma from my sexual abuse, from my parental alienation, and from some other abuses that I had endured over my lifetime, other traumas that I had experienced. In that, I found my voice, and I decided to come forward and tell my story and what had happened to me in the hopes of helping others like me. When I came forward, there were members within our family friends circle that had called me a liar, an attention seeker, publicly. No one in the family came to my defense. Members did know that I had been abused and that my abuser had confessed, as I had later found out after coming forward and going public, that my abuser actually had confessed and came forward to more members of my family and told them what he had done to me. And I was like, wow. And in that moment, I thought, this is what I need to do. We have to advocate for ourselves and for other victims. We have to find our voices and use them, because knowing, with the knowledge that I had been abused, I was still called a liar, an attention seeker, and people had tried to discredit me, knowing that I had been abused and my abuser had confessed. The only way that we are going to allow victims to heal from this horrible trauma is by giving them a platform, giving them a safe place to tell their story and speak their truth, and also advocating to help prevent, as this can be a life sentence to victims. I chose to put my story to paper, and I wrote a book called Remember the Child. May we all remember the children of this world and the children lost within the adults of this world who need the opportunity to be seen, heard, understood, and given that opportunity to heal. And may we be beacons of light with our voices to stop sexual abuse.